Welcome to Rolling Through Negotiations. This is episode 103, recording this in October 2025. I'm Matthew Karakalakis. I'm the host of Rolling Through Negotiations. If this is your first time listening, I hope you find something useful. And if you're a returning listener, high five, high 10, and welcome back. Love having you here. Now, seriously, I love it when we have our returning guests connecting with us each and every single week on Thursdays when the brand new episodes come out. Today, our guest is Uncle David Arden. He is a Kokatha and Gunditjmara man. He's a songman. And one of the things that I really get appreciation in this discussion, and I think that you'll really appreciate as well, is the way that he speaks about music and the way that music can really help us to shape identity, to understand who we are and where we're going is so powerful in this episode. I think you're going to really love this one. The depth in which we hear Uncle David Arden share his views as a First Nations elder, I think is powerful indeed. You're going to love it. Let's roll. Uncle David, welcome to Rolling Through Negotiations. It's amazing to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Matthew.
And we were saying just before we started recording this one that it would be wonderful to have just a brief acknowledgement coming from you for First Nations people listening in.
Yep, no worries. Hey, I'd like to pay my respect to the traditional elders and peoples of the country that I'm standing upon, and to all elders and peoples of each country that this goes to.
Beautiful. Thank you, Uncle. The first question I've got for you is really about collaboration.
Okay.
Because you have an amazing history when it comes to working with both First Nations peoples like Uncle Archie Roach and Auntie Ruby Hunter, and also non-First Nations peoples, like recording you've done with Paul Kelly in such a massive hit that was released. How do you successfully negotiate and successfully work with artists across cultures?
Well, within that sense, a lot of it was a beautiful journey that I took, and it's a journey that, the elders created for me, within that sense, and to go down beautiful, urban and country, and regional, rural or desert areas, which I was so lucky to journey around, and I basically, had the chance, to grow up in Collingwood, Fitzroy, in Melbourne, Victoria, and there, I took a journey, it's part of the stolen generation, and within that sense of the stolen generation, my mother was also a part of that. My father was part of the mission, the missionaries, within, the Lake Condo in Victoria, and they come down to Fitzroy to escape the clutches of the missionaries, to be their own people, and so I was born in Carlton, Fitzroy, and not knowing who I was, and grew up in the Commission Flats, and then I was lucky, that I ended up going to this incredible school and met this teacher, Graham Drendel, who brought me an album called From My Eyes, No Fixed Address. And within that sense, I listened to this beautiful album, which was, it's called From My Eyes, but, there's beautiful songs on there. And one of them was a really great, activist song called We Have Survived. And within that sense, I listened, and then I realised that, actually, I'm First Nation Australian. Within that sense, and then I started music, because I loved the music so much, I started learning how to play and perform them songs, And in the journey, and then I took a journey, and then, back in the era that it was Countdown, and No Fixed Address went on Countdown, and there was another act there called Goanna, band, and they came up with Solid Rock. So, and that's where, I started understanding more of it, at the age of, 13, going on to 14, within that sense, and started learning and playing as much as I can, and then played. You know, they had events in our community called cabarets, and within the cabarets they were called funeral fund cabarets. It was a moment where a lot of our people got buried, but they were unmarked graves. See, and what we did is the elders there, beautiful elder auntie, nanas, mamas, they created this event where they could raise money. So then, any time our people died, they had, marked graves, where tombstones and stuff like that. They weren't not unmarked graves. And so that's what we did, and that was our training ground to learn how to play music, and that's where I had the chance to perform with No Fixed Address there. And then that's where I also I played in a band I was a drummer with Hard Times, and then every now and then Uncle Archie and Auntie Ruby would come and sing a couple of songs in our band. So that's where we all grew up together within that sense. Does that make sense within of understanding the starting, the lifing, the connection of it? Uncle Archie and Auntie Ruby and myself.
Absolutely, Uncle. I think that it's amazing hearing the way that music has, especially in those early days, helped you understand your identity.
Yeah.
And music was the way of you connecting with mob and understanding more about culture, yourself, where you come from, in such an important time of your life.
Yeah, yeah.
How is it that music is so powerful in that way? So if we were to take a step back in your life when you were the young fella, you didn't really understand that you were Aboriginal or what Aboriginal meant.
Yeah,
you're living there in Collingwood or Fitzroy and you're really trying to work these things out.
Yeah.
How is it that music has such a powerful way of teaching culture?
Yeah. Well, it's I love the quote, and I heard this quote, I don't know if it was TV or something, music soothes the savage beast. And within that sense of, when we're confused and when we're sad, when we're happy or when we're angry, it soothes the savage beast. Within that sense, it helps you understand the interpretation of, And so through the storytelling was the biggest key. And music is that. It's storytelling, through song, through singing, through words, through beautiful harmony and melody music. It takes you on a journey to connect to, and that's what has been the beautiful thing for me and for so many people is, you reflect that song reminds me, that song, gives me this emotional connection, you know what I mean? All these things as you look at music, and, artistry and, within the storytelling is to, hearing, great acts like, Uncle Jimmy Little, and, Bart Willoughby and, the Pigram Brothers and Uncle Jimmy Chai up in Broome and, all these, and so many all around the world. But, I can only speak within ours, around Australia. So many that, have brought, the concept for you to connect to your cultural, way, and that's where I've learnt so much, and that's where I learnt with Uncle Archie and Auntie Ruby how they went down that road writing, to connect to their cultural way. When, and same for Uncle Archie, Auntie Ruby was lucky she connected and she still was around it, but she also was a stolen generation. But with Uncle Archie, he was solely, he didn't have nothing, Same as me, I didn't have nothing within that sense, but I did have my aunties. So that's what was the greatest thing for me. I had my aunties to keep teaching me and keep me up to speed with my Gunditjmara side of it, And now that's what I'm doing with my Kokatha side, I'm trying to sit down and learn as much as I can, like we were talking a moment ago, within that sense of trying to understand my cultural Kokatha way, within it, and First Nation ways within this country, but Auntie Ruby and Uncle Archie was so good at writing with that, and you listen to their albums and what they talk about, yeah.
Is music going to be a vehicle that you use to understand Kokatha culture as well?
Yeah, it is, and it always has. For 70,000 years and further. It always has been. Storytelling. I will storytell you to educate you your cultural, bloodline, songline of how you connect to your clan. How could you connect to your cultural way within life, and it's always been that, and it's just towards the old traditional way. And towards today, it needs to be modernised, and that's within the modernised. That's what we're doing today within these music, And look, the reality is, people can commercialise it. For me, it's not about commercialism. For me, it's just there for people to hear and understand, Matthew, and be a part of it. So then they, towards, especially after the Yes campaign, the referendum, it needs to be, not only for our own people, which is so important, and for our next generation or kids, when our own people don't teach their children of who they are, and they basically, because they've been, simulation has taken its toll. Modern Commonwealth simulation. Now I'll say Commonwealth within this because we're not French or we're not any other European country. You know what I mean? Or within that sense, once you are them, because once you are that in Europe, there's so many cultural backgrounds, First National cultural backgrounds, and they still deliver that, within language, not within the Western way, within the English Western way. You know what I mean? They talk cultural, whether I'm Italian, whether I'm Greek, whether I'm, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? When I'm Turkish, whether I'm so many, they're the native people of the world, same like us, within that sense. But they still keep practicing it, and their parents keep teaching their children. You know what I mean? So that's the same thing within that. What we're talking about here. Towards, we have to write out songs and bring awareness to our cultural way, Matthew. Yeah, through music and songwriting.
It's incredible whenever we connect and have the chance to listen to an elder with wisdom like you, Uncle, that we start feeling different ways of appreciation for a whole range of things depending on what's being discussed. But here I'm really feeling a new insight and appreciation for what music means. Because on one hand, using, say, a very naive, some people might say a very naive, westernized view of what music is. You might just say it's something that sounds nice, particularly if you look at this modern music to say something that's really flashy and trendy and all this sort of stuff. But what you're really helping in understanding is that what comes with music in terms of something as deep as identity, the understanding of storytelling, culture, history, the emotion that music brings, the connection, the people, the understanding of your own Aboriginality through music. This is incredibly powerful stuff.
Yeah.
How can we use music as a tool to create a better society, better place for everyone? I mean, we've seen a lot of issues recently as well between mob and a lot of sort of racist groups and everything that we won't go into in this podcast, but we can say that there's a real time right now for proper social change, for everybody to come together a lot better than what we are. How can music be used to negotiate healing, to bring that better future?
Yeah. Well, it's being able to sit down with, a whole lot of communities, with people and communities, and to start bringing up and understanding the common ground. And within the common ground is to, start talking about our cultural backgrounds, and the similarities, it's different pictures, but it's similarity, within that sense, So with, to be able to achieve that, and sit down and people are open to that, and having a great conversation and find their understanding, at the same, building bridges and at the table of the building bridges of the cultural backgrounds, you know, and then once we start understanding and how we can play a part of, and then we'll understand our common ground, you know, within that, Matthew, you know.
Can you share a little bit about the song that you did together with Paul Kelly?
Yeah.
What you know, the name of the song, what it's about, and also how that song, how that music was and continues to be a way for bringing black fellas and white Australians together.
Yeah. Well, it was, you know, it was a kind of a, you know, kind of the moment of Anzac, you know, within that sense, you know, and it was, you know, for me, it wasn't about what it is about the war, you know, and what it's about, you know, killing humanity, you know. That's not what it's about. It's about freedom, you know. It's about, you know, for Aboriginal people back then and our great-grandfathers, you know, back in the 1800s right up to the 1900s, you know, early 1900s of the First World War, you know, for Aboriginal people here in Australia, we weren't classed as cattle. You know, cattle was worthier than us, you know what I mean? You know, and that's why I was talking to you a moment ago towards it and understanding, you know, that we were being taken and put in missions. In our Kokatha way is a Kunaba mission, which is in Seduna, you know, and that, you know, a lot of our grandparents were taken, you know, from there and put in, you know, there, and same for, you know, where, you know, Framingham in Warrnambool and in Haywood, Portland Haywood is Lake Conda, and my great grandfather James Arden, you know, he was taken there, and there were so many of my grandmothers, who's Murray Lovett, her ancestors and, you know, uncles and aunties, that a lot of Lovetts went to war, and why they went to war is they went to war to get away from the mission, you know, within that sense, to be their own man, because if they become a soldier, then they would have their own. They end up having their own funding, you know, within the wages, like, you know, army wages. And so that sort of made them independent, and so they didn't need to live on the mission no more, you know?
Yep.
And which was kind of really good, but I tell you, the missionary and the government didn't like it because they're not controlling Aboriginal people within that sense back then. So they went to war to do that, to, you know, to fight for freedom, you know, but at the same time, you know, to be free themselves. So when they come back home, you know, can grab their family, and because if they lived on the mission back before them, every time there was a ruckus, they would resectioned Aboriginal people to another mission, you know, and that's how it, you know what I mean? So they were cattle. They went from one cattle yard to another cattle yard to another cattle yard and so on, you know, concentration camps, you know. You know, that's what they really were. But look, we'll use these beautiful, deadly names and call them missionaries. You know, missions or reserves, you know, within that sense. and so that's why I wrote that song, you know, within that sense, to tell the story about, you know, my great-grandfather, my uncles and aunties, that, you know, that I heard from my father's sisters, my auntie mums, and they told me the story. So I wrote this beautiful song called Freedom Call. Yeah, and then I asked Paul, would you be interested in singing this song with me, you know, and is there anything, do you want to change a couple of, you know, words in there that you think that needs to be changed? And so we did that, and then we went and did the video, yeah. And it's on YouTube if people want to go and look at there.
Beautiful. And so when you were looking to collaborate with Paul, back then there would have been other non-Aboriginal people that you could have collaborated with as well.
Yeah.
But there were some specific reasons why you chose to reach out to Paul.
Yeah,
and
well, decided to Paul. Yep, sorry.
I think this kind of wisdom is really helpful for people, because sometimes it's a beautiful thing when we see non-Aboriginal people and Aboriginal people working together, and to be able to identify the right non-Aboriginal person to reach out to and say, hey, let's do this together. But how did you go about choosing Paul? How did you know he was the right person back then to be collaborating with?
Well, in that sense, I just wanted to do something with him. I've been dying to do something since we, you know, so 40 years, you know, to 35 years ago when he did something with Uncle Archie, which is help Uncle Archie bring awareness to Took the Children Away song, you know. he was a part of doing that. He brought, apart from he recorded, but he also sang it and in his band. You know what I mean? Back in the 90s, early 90s, so I was really, I really wanted to do something with him, yeah. And I asked him, and he said, yeah, no worries. So come and do something with me, yeah. And it was pretty much sort of an honour, And within that sense, because in our culture, we got Scottish and Irish, in our culture as well. For me, Arden, that's German English. That's my great fourth-time grandfather, Albert Arden. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. And what was that, Uncle?
He's an English German, yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. And so I can also appreciate that in this time with the collaboration with Paul, it was also about the fact that you knew Paul for a long period of time. There was somebody that you respected. In Uncle Archie Roach had already done some work with Paul, and so you were confident that there was some shared values and that he was the right person because you knew him. And I think that's something that people can often look at when non-Aboriginal people are being asked, hey, do you want to collaborate with Mob? Hey, do you know this person? What are their values? What sort of things have they done before? Are they a right fit based on who your family is, who you know out there in community and things they've done before to really make sure there's that proper values alignment before doing stuff, right?
Yeah, and it's really great that someone comes in, a part of the community, or be part of the community, not just the commercial community, that he's bringing awareness, and that's really great because I love the past of what he's done already over the last 35 years. That he's as a legendary singer, Australian legendary singer, he's bringing awareness to a whole lot of issues, within society. And like you were saying, why does music, how does it make changes within, with community and society, in this country, and beautiful Paul Kelly, just like Shane Howard from Goanna was the first out of all of them, like Paul Kelly and Midnight Oil. They're great people to start doing that, within that sense and making change within their community, Yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask you 3 questions now. They sort of flow on one after the other. I want to ask you, the first is, what is a song that you've created or performed that really resonates for you when it comes to elders and honouring elders, and a song that really resonates for you in terms of family and appreciation and love for family, and a song that really resonates for you when it comes to connection with country? So I'd love to hear.
So connection
elders.
to country.
Yeah, okay.
Connection
with country.
Let's do the list then. Remind me of that list. So I'll start with connecting to country. Is a beautiful, song called Kokatha and Gunditjmara clan. So within that sense, a lot of people ask me, it seems to be the first song of when I do this Meerta concert that I do at the moment, and that's the first song because it's an introduction to my, two cultural backgrounds, and my cultural connection, from the Kokatha and the Gunditjmara country, and that's who I am. They're my two, cultural connections. Kokatha Gunditjmara clan. If you look at that, that's that one. Now, what's the other one? A family.
The next was a song that really you love. That's family.
Yeah. The next one was family. Well, I've got a couple. I've got a couple. There's one called "Close My Eyes," and that one is what would it have been like, if Wally and my little brother Wally, who's passed away now, and what would me and him be like if we grew up with our, brother Gavin, brother James, and our 3 sisters, Rachel, Almagine and Becca, our Wanganeen connection, our Davey Wanganeen connection. What it would have been like if we grew up together, but I wrote that song like we grew up together, So that's a connection to me of connecting to my family who I met when I was 30 years of age because of the stolen generation. And there's another one there is I was brought up by 3 elders, which is my father's sister, my auntie mums, and it's a song about my birth mother, Cheryl Davies Wanganeen, within that sense, and it was about me and my little brother Walwal. We were brought up by these three ladies, but we come from our birth mother. You know what I mean? It's called "See I Hear, I Know That You're There." See I Hear, yeah,
See, I hear, I know that you're there.
yeah.
How do you write a song like this when? Yeah, from the perspective of what it would have been like. How do you place yourself in that sort of position?
Sometimes it gets real hard and funny, but it's an old thing. I don't know if you ever met Uncle Coogee Edwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, he says this beautiful, and I totally agree with him. And I'm not quoting his quote. Well, I actually am. The reality is, he says, "You might think I write or I pen. You might think I write or I pen these things, but they actually come from my elders. They come from the dreaming. And the dreaming, they put these things into my head, and then I pen them. So it comes through me. You know what I mean? Within between watching, and so between me and our elders, we come up with these beautiful Dreamtime stories. And that's when you're talking about Dreamtime stories, that's what it is. To understand, what is Dreamtime stories. Yeah.
Do you feel like, even though you were brought up stolen generation, there's parts of culture that's just in your DNA? So, for example, when you speak of dreaming, you would have learned about dreaming through people in community and everything. But was there also part of this that you just know about because it's who you are?
Yeah, and that I've sort of, I sort of comprehended that too, Matthew. Within the sense, every humanity, human being, it's like how the birds go south. So when they're born, their mother and father's not there, but they just end up going south for some reason. You know what I mean? And so within that sense, what you're stating and what you're saying is so true, that, it is, we've just got to touch base with it. So within the storytelling, within this beautiful, organisation that me and Auntie Vi are creating called Open Doors, it's about cultural connections, and within that sense of what you just said there, to be able to awaken them things that are in us that if you have never, if you're not born around cultural practicing, that it becomes a second, interaction within your lifestyle, then that's okay, because you've got to reconnect back to your old traditional ways. Because don't stop living and acting within modernisation. Within Western life. But don't let your cultural background, your native cultural background, become extinct within that sense, And within that sense, it's up to you to re-earth it, Yeah. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And this is where I think there's a great responsibility for Aboriginal people to connect and to continuously learn and to listen to elders, to listen to each other, and remain open and excited by the opportunity to learn culture as well.
Yeah, no, that's it, eh? I think that's so important, Matthew, of what you're saying, and what we're saying.
Going back to what I feel in my heart to ask you is, when we speak about culture, something being cultural culture, that's such a broad and open term, right? And sometimes it can be overused without people really understanding what the word really means. What is culture to you? If you're going to explain the meaning of what is the meaning of culture?
It's my existence. Culture is my existence. Culture is my connection. Culture is my belonging. Culture is my, mentally, physically, spiritually, embodiment, soul. And if I don't have and want to know as much as I can, I am empty. And yes, look, I'm not stating that I'm, I have a Western life in me, and why am I empty? I'm just saying culturally and backgroundly and bloodlinely and songline. If you understand the bloodline and the songline within Aboriginal concepts, within that sense, I have connection that makes me feel belonged. You know what I mean? You know, within the Western, it also you can feel belonged. You know, but then you haven't got your cultural traditional, and what we call tribal, traditional, connection to your family, bloodline, family tree. And when I say bloodline, songline, that's the family tree. And within that family tree, you got to know where you come from and who you come from and where you come from and where you come from now, from there, from now, and that connects you back. So that way you don't feel mentally, physically, spiritually empty. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. And I think that it makes sense, and there's a lot of depth and a lot of meaning to what you've shared as well.
Yeah.
In this. And so there's some real risks these days about culture being lost.
Yeah.
And I think that music and the recording of music and the ability that we have these days, even to record conversations just like this, and then younger generations can hear you speaking. I think that we can use technology to try and keep culture alive. But sometimes it could get worried about what's going to be lost into the future.
Yeah.
How do you think we can mentor those next generations to make sure that we always keep culture alive?
Yeah, well, it was great. That was the beautiful thing before colonialism. What it was, within the elders, and the elders would teach the next generations, and guide them through life, down the path of secure and structuring their life way of living, with all their knowledge, and between music and storytelling and all these things that you would hear all these concepts, towards to straighten, to structuring, your life within your, teenage to your adult to your elder, ness, from the start of your life to the ending of your life, you would, and you will always be able to sit down like we're doing here today. We're having a really good old, yarn and storytelling towards doing all these things, and and within that sense of helping people understand what we're where we're going and what what the concept and what the cultural backgrounds are. What do between old traditional ways, but modernisation too, within that sense, Matthew, and that's the importance. See, by having all them things, you've got a structure and strategy within your life, and at the end of the day, and we're not telling you, we are not a cult, and we're not letting our religion tell you what to do and how to do it, we're just saying this is how I do it within my life, and it's up to you. You could use some of it of what you want to do, and see if you come from me and you're my family, within that sense, then, they're a little bit stepping stones to help you go, whether you want to step on them or not,
Yeah, because culture isn't like the dogma of a religion or the dogma of church where you do things because that's what people say. Used to do because it's a Sunday morning and everyone goes to church or something.
Matthew, and I'll break your spirit. If you go against God and you do say something wrong, which I don't like you to say, and sometimes, I have no right to tell you what to say, you know what I mean? But I'm using God within that sense to make you, not do it. But you are right, you are fair, but the human being next to you, saying that God says, how do you know God said that? I need to have God stand right next to me and tell me. I have to hear it for myself. I don't want to hear it from another human being, What makes you so special that you can talk to God, but we can't? You know what I mean? And I don't want to get too close to that religion. I'm just I'm not putting it down. I'm just stating that humanity needs to be open and fair and stand back a bit too, you know, within that sense. I am talking about my own culture and my own cultural way. Same with religion. Religion is it, but I will not tell you what to do. And I will not use a figure, you know, that says if you don't do it, you will be, and I'll mentally frig you up.
Yeah.
And that's what religion does sometimes. It mentally frigs you up and says, but a human being just told me. God didn't tell me. A human being told me, not God. You know what I mean? Within that sense. And so what I'm saying within culture, all I'm asking you is this is the way you live and how you should live. And it's up to you to spend the next 20 years or 30 years structuring your strategy and how, you know, because we learn the trades to help us get through life. You know what I mean? And that's what's so beautiful about education. Within education is learning your trades and then for you, have to, you know, society has to learn how they can utilise it positively, respectfully, you know, and with love. Not disrespectful love, but with love. Like Uncle Archie always said, let love rule.
I think that's a big key to it. It's that love piece. So if we look at the situation of, hey, do this because God said do this and it's by some evilish priest who's just trying to take advantage or sending mob off to missions back in the days.
Yeah, back in the day.
There was no love in those words. There was no love in those actions. And I think that is the difference between knowing when to listen to somebody, whether they be an elder, whether they be somebody with an organisational structure, is that person speaking from an authentic place of love. Because love is always going to be right, isn't it?
That's right, Matthew, and exactly what you're stating. You know, that's what we're stating, and you say it better than me. You know, within that sense. You know,
I'm just learning and mirroring what you're saying.
We're learning off each other. You know, and we're working out. See, that's where I learn. You know, I can say things and that, but I love listening to people, and that was always the case. That young people, they're also elders as well. You know, because just to listen to the way they say things, and they're tuned in with society and life now, you know, of this day and age, you know, within that sense, you know, and I'm lucky that I can still keep on writing, or we write with people that can still, you know, get into people's, you know, but it's still the same way, you know, within interpretation of literature, you know, that's so true and so beautiful what you just said, what we're saying,
Awesome, Uncle. And as I was saying, I think that I'm just mirroring and understanding and using words to try to connect with what you're speaking. So it's a great example of how we can learn from elders whenever we have a conversation like this. We've had an awesome yarn today. And what I would like to ask you just as we wrap up this episode is if we do have some non-Aboriginal people listening to us right now, what is something that we can say to them to really encourage them in the strong spirit of collaboration?
Please do not sit back, stand back and wait. Please come forward, you know. And look, in reality, there's so many Aboriginal events, you know, First Nation events, and please come out and be a part of it. Please sit down if there's places within communities that you're at and you can go and sit down, because that's what's been the problem. We've just been doing a tour at a lot of performing arts centres in Victoria, and we're going to do a national one soon. And within that sense, you know, and our brand new album's called Meerta, the Ballad of James Arden. And within that beautiful new album, it's the story. I'm bringing awareness of my great grandfather, and you know, it's kind of like the concept of what he was that person back then. Back in the 1800s, he was the last of the traditional tribal language. You know, before it got to that stage of if you ever heard a song called "From My Eyes" from Uncle Archie. In his second album, it was a song written about Auntie Ruby, and it's called "They Slapped Him Around a Little Bit to Teach Him Another One," which in speaking different languages, you know. And so what it did end up doing, it pushed our traditional tribal language out of the door, you know, and which we have to bring back. But it was not from native tongue. It's, within that sense, we pick it back up and we're still talking to it, but it's not coming from the native tongue. So, but it's still, that's that involvement within traditional way of speaking, within Aboriginal culture, it was a different dialect. And within that sense, today, it's another dialect. So it changes and changes. Over decades and decades, it changes and changes. And within that, and towards this modernisation, but it still comes from that background. It still comes from the old branch, you know what I mean? Which is so beautiful, So, and that's what Meerta, I read this song about him and his journey and the things that he went through his life and stuff like that, and I really wanted to do it. And that's the brand new album that I've got out now. And within that, it's a brand new show called Meerta, the Ballad of James Arden. And I'm singing so many of these beautiful songs that I've written within 30 years,
That's awesome. So,
and bringing awareness and talking about culture and my cultural background and it's basically what is it? It's me as a Kokatha and Gunditjmara songman telling my stories, through my cultural backgrounds,
That's beautiful. And so, if people want to get a copy of Meerta, the Ballad of James Arden,
or come and see the show.
Or come and see the show. They can they buy it online, the album?
Yeah, they can buy it online, which would be nice, because then I can take my kids to the pictures. No, I always throw that out there.
It's a good one.
But within that sense, they can do that or can go on Spotify,
Yeah, it's so good. No, so these days many artists don't actually, buy the album and things like that. They get it on Spotify, but there's different ways of supporting. And I think that if you are a Aboriginal person or non-Aboriginal person, you want to support Uncle David and his amazing work as a songman, the way he keeps culture alive. I think that, getting a copy of buying a copy of the album or going to see live performance, beautiful things to be doing.
Yeah.
Uncle David, your work's amazing. I have learned a ton from listening to you, as I always do. So thanks for connecting. Thanks for sharing your wisdom today.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Matthew. And say hello to Dad and your family, please.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the podcast.
Yeah. No, have.
And remember to like, subscribe, and share this episode. And remember, brand new episodes of Rolling Through Negotiations podcast come out each and every single Thursday, just like this one.
Yeah, great. Us. Yeah, that's it. Us. Yeah.
Do you know what us means, Uncle?
Yeah, I don't know what us means, but I used it many a times in my life.
I love your positivity and connecting on the word that you did. I didn't think you knew what I meant, but I love your positivity, picking it up. Us is a Brazilian jiu-jitsu, a martial arts thing when you're about to train with someone, just a bit of respect.
Yeah. That's why I used it back in the day. Yeah.
Deadly.
Yeah.
Deadly.
Yeah, deadly.